All right, let's jump right into this. Today, we're exploring the Labyrinth of Hollowed Souls. This is a beautifully dark, genuinely haunting moral parable about societal collapse and human nature. It's a pretty chilling look at what actually happens when a society just completely abandons its moral compass. If you've ever been fascinated by the psychology of how communities collapsed from the inside out, or by those deep cautionary myths about human nature, then this explainer is going to be absolutely riveting.
So, the text kicks things off right in the middle of a false paradise. It drops us into this community that is entirely tethered to a collective delusion. They've explicitly traded their inner compass for, as the text calls it, the shimmering comfort of the Jester's illusion. And this Jester's perspective is such a fascinating angle. It's this incredibly cynical shadow play where life is treated as nothing more than cheap entertainment. The citizens literally become puppets. They trade the heavy, demanding labor of objective truth for the easy, glittering comfort of a lie.
And honestly, what's so brilliant about the labyrinth itself is that it's not a physical maze with stone walls. It operates as this timeless archetype for moral decay. It's a mental and spiritual trap. The people are locked in by the invisible chains of their own apathy. Think about the classic myths of societal collapse. The ancient empires that rotted from within long before a single barbarian ever breached the gates. We're looking at that exact same labyrinth here. The citizens trap themselves by completely surrendering their reason.
So who actually lives in this maze? Well, the text calls them hollowed puppets. They falsely believe they're free, mostly because they've decided morality is just some tedious burden they don't need to carry. They walk in this hypnotic lockstep, literally with empty eyes. It instantly brings to mind the folklore of fallen empires, right? Where citizens get so distracted by bread and circuses that they start believing true greatness requires zero actual virtue. But of course, their freedom is a total illusion. They are weighed down by the heavy, invisible chains of their own indifference.
Act 2. The Rot and the Metamorphosis. Let's see how this stagnant society tips over into an active nightmare.
The visual and psychological contrast laid out here is just incredibly stark. On the surface, you have this glowing illusion. It's a fragile lattice of surface-level connections and shared cynical whispers. But festering right underneath that is a darkening reality. It's a rotting web. Because when objective truth is systematically dimmed, the void doesn't stay empty. It gets filled by a raw, completely unchecked hunger. It's a pretty terrifying image of how quickly superficial connections rot away when truth is taken out of the equation.
And we actually get to trace this terrifying evolution step by step. It shows us exactly how, when a conscience is abandoned, stagnant vessels twist into active predators. First, reason is surrendered to the illusion. Then comes the rot of everyday cynicism. From there, the hunger expands until finally, we hit a full metamorphosis. These puppets, who initially just wanted to vibe in their comfortable little illusion, find their base desires totally mutating. The transition from hollow, apathetic puppets to predatory monsters is frankly bone-chilling.
Now, this is a crucial takeaway. The real threat doesn't come from an invader. As the text explicitly warns, these monsters were birthed from the very rot that the community nurtured. The community wasn't destroyed by some outside force. They quite literally birthed their own monsters because they refused to engage with the natural laws of cause and effect. Just like the mythologies of doomed ancient empires, the neighbor transforms into the beast, and they're driven by this insatiable appetite born directly out of the indifference they used to celebrate.
The text refers to this dynamic as the tyrant's choice. And it's a brutal reality check. The predator and the passive prey, they are really just two sides of the exact same coin. Both are falling victim to the inevitable outcome of abandoning their souls. By letting their base desires cannibalize their spirit, they've completely sealed their own fate. The monsters prowling the halls and the passive puppets waiting to be hunted are hopelessly intertwined in this massive, catastrophic failure of morality.
Act 3. The Reckoning. Because every theatrical tragedy eventually has to hit its climax. And this is where reality comes crashing back. The text gives us the brilliant metaphor of the great clock, signaling that the theater of vanity is officially over. Just a single metallic clink, piercing right through the fog of the illusion. I absolutely love this imagery. The great clock represents the undeniable, inescapable return of objective reality and consequence. You can ignore the truth for a long time in the labyrinth. You can sit back and enjoy the jester's little shadow play, but you absolutely cannot stop the clock. Its toll is inevitable. When objective reality returns, it is swift. It's undeniable. Minute by minute, the suffocating illusion is pierced, the structures of lies ignite, and finally, a cleansing fire consumes all of it. And the most vital thing to take away from this phase is that nobody gets a pass. Neither the monsters who instigated the rot nor the complacent bystander puppets escape. The reckoning comes for absolutely everyone who surrendered their reason.
Which brings us to the absolute core cautionary warning of this entire explainer. Discarding the armor of virtue to take the easy shortcuts of deception practically guarantees your own self-destruction. The text does not mince words here. The darkness we create for others ultimately consumes the house we built for ourselves. It is a harsh, incredibly necessary lesson. It perfectly mirrors those classic ancient tales of hubris, where the very architects of deception end up buried under the rubble of their own collapsing empires.
So when the structures of lies finally burn away to ash, two distinctly different paths emerge. Those who happily traded their inner compass for cheap shortcuts and base desires, they are lost to the ashes of deception. But for the ones who manage to hold on to the compass of reason, the ones carrying the lantern of primal honesty, for them, there's the dawn of survival. It's a very stark reminder that the only true path out of the ashes is through objective truth.
To wrap up this explainer, we really have to turn this dark myth back around on ourselves. In the labyrinths of our own modern lives, we are facing the exact same choices as the ancients did. So the question is, will you carry the lantern of primal honesty, or will you emerge into the dawn as just another hollowed puppet?